Hey everybody, I just wanted to share a quick experience I had with a foreclosure property that you could find on homesearch.com. It's an auction property. It was listed in the MLS as well. So it was a completely new experience to me going through this process. So we were not successful, but there was a few things I thought would be valuable to other people attempting to win a bid on homesearch.com. Number one, I was not happy to learn that these properties only offer a 1% commission to buyer's agents. We put the value of this property between $295,000 and $305,000, which would be around a $3,000 commission and almost $6,000 less than the normal commission for a property of this value. And it was not going to be less work because it was less money. Number two, the earnest money required was 3% of the eventual winning bid. Normal earnest money is 1%. So the earnest money on this property would be $9,000. In order to even bid, you had to submit your credit card information, and they would put a $2,500 hold on your credit card just to even submit the bid. Even though I created the account to bid with, I had my client enter his credit card information in because I could not take that risk. Number three, the real risk that I was uncomfortable with was that the earnest money was not refundable under any condition. Normal purchases, there are 3 deadlines that would potentially entitle a buyer to their earnest money. Should they terminate the contract. But in this scenario, the earnest money was never going to be returned. So, for instance, without these protections, a buyer would need full loan approval, an appraisal, and a successful inspection before the bidding process even began to fully protect themselves, or mostly protect themselves from losing their earnest money because they were unable to complete the purchase. A fourth really big hindrance we encountered was that we were not able to determine whether or not there would be unpaid liens that would have to be paid by the buyer at closing in order to free up title. And you would need a free title in order to obtain the loan. So in this scenario, we determined that there were probably unpaid HOA fees, but the HOA company would not give us the amount of unpaid fees. And then on top of that, we called Nation Star. Nation Star said that the buyer would be responsible for any fees, but they did not unpaid fees, yet they did not know how much they were. They said they would pay the HOA fees from when they foreclosed on the property until closing. And then I called the HOA, and the HOA told me that the buyer would not be responsible for any HOA fees, that that the bank at most was responsible for 6 months of back HOA fees from before they took ownership. So there was just a lot of unknowns, and we did consider getting a status letter from the HOA. We just ran out of time, actually. A fifth real risk was the appraisal. If you're getting a loan, for instance, in this case, we put the value of the home between $295,000 and $305,000. If the buyer's getting a loan for 95%, and he wins the property for $5,000 more than it appraises for, he's going to be putting down now 5% plus $5,000. And you can see how that could get very risky very quickly, and they have to rely on our estimation of what it would appraise for, which is, the appraisals fluctuate a great deal, so it was a very uncomfortable situation there. So the bidding process, we did learn in advance that you would be able to bid more than once, and you would be able to see the current high bid. But there were still a few surprises in the bidding process, mainly that the property was bid up in forced increments of $7,500. So we quickly ascertained the need to know what spot we wanted to be in the process so that we could land as close to our high bid as possible. So for instance, bids were at $276,500, $284,000, $291,500, $299,000, and $306,500. And their high bid was close to $300,000. They needed to start bidding on the $284,000 mark to land on the $299,000 bid. At the end of the bidding, the increment changed to $2,500, but I don't know what triggered that change. And then this was really unknown that we never figured out. What is the buyer's premium that homesearch.com is charging? Is that included in your final bid, or is that on top of your final bid? It's they say the buyer's premium is 5%. It sounded to me like that was 5% extra cash the buyer had to bring to the table. And then, of course, you would not be able to finance that 5% unless the appraisal was 5% higher than the high bid. So in summary, to minimally risk their earnest money, the buyer would before bidding have to have full loan approval or cash, invest $300 to $700 in an inspection, have an appraisal done if getting a loan for around $450, have an HOA status letter done for up to $350. Number two, in this case, this property sold for $40,000 more than any comparable sales, and for $30,000 more than what we think it would appraise for. Number three, the buyer overpaid by around $45,000, which would have to be cash if they are getting a loan. If they don't have cash, they lose their $9,000 of earnest money. So all in all, just seems like it was a bad buy and a very risky process for everybody involved.